Hello Hawthorne and Sycamore, it's so lovely to see you all. It's time for our class reader again. We're still reading the Skylarks War by Hilary McKay because it is a very chunky book. I think we're about halfway through now, and the next chapter is chapter 19 and it's called Lucy. Now if you remember, Lucy is the horse that belongs to the cousin's grandparents. So you have Clara and Peter, who are brother and sister, and then you have their cousin Rupert. Now Rupert's just gone into World War I as a soldier, and he has begged and begged not to send Lucy to his cousin Clara, because although he's been painting a beautiful picture of war in his letters to his family, he hasn't been telling the truth. And we all know the truth, that World War I was not a delightful place to be. Many young boys thought it was going to be an adventure, but sadly, I think Rupert has seen far too many horrible things that he knows that this place is not the right place for Lucy, and this place being the Western Front in France. So let's see what happens to Lucy. Does she go or doesn't she? What do you think will happen? Right, let's get going. Chapter 19, Lucy. The second letter arrived on Saturday morning. 2 letters about Lucy in 2 days. Clara became very still as she read. Simon, who had taken it upon himself the Saturday morning task of cleaning the fireplaces, saw something was wrong and asked, "What is it?" "It's from Rupert," said Clara, and her father overheard and asked, "Rupert? Quite the family hero, I gather, these days. Is he well?" "I think so. He says it's raining. He mostly writes jokes." "Ah," said his father, and hurried away, as if fearing he might have to listen to them. "He's written about Lucy again," said Clara, holding out her letter to Simon. "Look, I've been doing the greats," he said, rubbing ashy smudges out on his trousers. "Never mind that, just read it." Clara pushed Rupert's letter into his red bony hands and noticed that they were suddenly trembling. "He's not telling you lots of things," said Simon after a moment. I know it's nice as he pretends." "Nice?" repeated Simon, shaking his head solemnly. "No, I think I'd better write back straight away and say not to worry about Lucy. That would help." "Then what?" "I've got a friend who knows about horses. At least he must, because he's got a horse, Chester. I often see him about the streets. Mr. King, he drives a rag and bone cart." "The one who told you how to clean a chimney?" said Simon suddenly. "I remember." "Yes, him. Perhaps he would help. Perhaps there would be a room in Jester's stables for Lucy too. Then Jester could have some days off pulling. He's very old." "But how'd you get Lucy here?" "Jester came across Devon in a horse box on a train. You'll have to steal her first." "Not steal. Never mind that just now. The first thing is to write to Rupert. Wait." Clara found a pen and a writing paper and began. Dear Rupert, don't worry any more about Lucy." Clara paused and looked at Simon. "Are you helping?" "Of course, anything. Simon and I are going to Cornwall today. By the time you get this letter, Lucy will be safe somewhere else. I will send you the handkerchief for the rain trickles next time I write to you." She looked up into Simon's dark eyes. "That's just a bit jokey bit, so he knows we can manage," she explained. He nodded, understanding. "Simon sends his love. You do, don't you?" "Yes, I do." "And so do I, Clary." "Can I write my own name?" asked Simon. "Yes, of course. Simon C. Bonington," wrote Simon, the bony one, carefully, and added Bonners in brackets. "Give me the pen, and I'll do the envelope. I've done it so often, I know it by heart." "Wait," she put kiss at the end of her message. "I always do," she told Simon, offering him the pen. "I better not," he said, smiling a little. "Now listen, you post that, and then you go and look for your friend with the horse. I'll go to the station and find out about tickets. Meet you back here as soon as you can." Rupert sent some money. I don't know if it'll be enough. I've got some too, just in case. I'll pawn Dad's watch," said Simon, and waited for Clara to protest such a recklessness, but instead she said, "Oh, what a good idea, and I've got one too we could use." "Not like this one," Simon said, fumbling his pocket. He held it out to show her, and Clara saw that it was heavy and gold and fat. Gold pocket watch on a brown plated lace. "He gave it to me to look after just before he went away." "Would he mind?" "I don't know. I wouldn't mind if I were him. I'll do it on the way to the train station. Bring yours, though. We'll need it for the train times." Clara nodded, picked up her precious silver watch, and hurried after him out the front door. "Good luck," she called as she set off for the station, and she wasted a moment to watch him hurry away in a great lanky clumsy strides, as he wore badly fitting 7-league boots. "Good luck," he called back, half turning before walking into a lamppost, staggering a little, and then vanishing round the corner. Clara didn't have good luck. It was easy enough to find Mr. King, but persuading him to look after Lucy turned out to be impossible. "No, no, no," he said, walking backwards with his hands in the air. "Not ever, not on your life. Them Sunday school prizes one thing, the books you had your name in, I could see they were yours, but nothing else. Not after the piano and the brass table. How to be sure the horse wasn't stolen? She would just be borrowed, pleaded Clara. Borrowed my hind foot, said Mr. King rudely. Wouldn't you like to have another horse to help Jester? And have him standing idle with his hocks all swelled from nothing to do? Jester earns his keep on the street, same as me, and that's that. So good day to you, missy, and mind you keep honest. He was no help at all, Clara told Simon, half angry, half tearful, when he arrived back at the house. Would a field do? Asked Simon. I should have thought of it before, but I was in such a hurry to get to the station. It's just a field, no stable or anything, but it's out at my great aunt's where my mum's staying. I belong to... Sorry. It's just a field, not a stable or anything, but it's out at my great aunt's where my mum's staying. It belongs to the cottage. A field? For Lucy? It would be perfect. Come on then, said Simon. Shove some things in a bag and we'll get the tickets. I pawned Dad's watch, got another £2. The Cornwall train's in half an hour and the first one back with a horse box is Monday. Nothing would have worked without Simon, Clara wrote to Rupert 2 days later. He thought of the field, and when we got Lucy back here, he would unloaded her at the station and walked her all the way. It was 9 miles. We stayed in Cornwall on Saturday and Sunday night, and we pretended to Grandfather that Simon had just come with me to visit, but Grandmother knew the truth, and she was so pleased. She helped us get Lucy to the station early on Monday morning, and she said she would manage Grandfather. Now perhaps I will be able to sleep at night, she said. Before I left, she did something she had never done before. She kissed me and said, Dear Clary. And she said that Simon was a wonderful friend, and he is. Will you write to Simon, please, Rupert? He pawned his father's watch so we'd have enough money, and I could see he was worrying about what his great-aunt would say. Vanessa told me that once his great-aunt said he was soft because he cried when his father went away. Clara had almost cried herself when the train left the little Cornish station so early in the morning. She waved and waved to her grandmother, and grandmother waved back, alone on the platform with the empty pony trap behind her. And if Clara could have done one thing then, it would have been to stop the train and leap out and rush back into her arms. I liked it there, Simon said, when he finally retreated from the window and went to sit beside him. That house, and the moor, and the sea. He had spent the weekend being as invisible as possible, but Grandmother had given him Rupert's room, and Clara had taken him around the old treasured landmarks, the sunny hollow where Rupert had once found a baby adder, picked it up and been promptly bitten. He said it hardly hurt at all, and walked away all the way home. Clara told Simon, but by the time he got back, we had to cut his sleeve off his jacket to get his arm out, and it was swollen for a week. She showed him too where the swallows always nested, the spot where Peter had jumped from the train, and the bathing place by the cliffs, and the shop where they bought ice creams. One day we should come back, said Simon, and Clara said, yes, you and Vanessa, and Peter, and me, and Rupert, all of us. And Lucy, said Simon. Did Rupert love Lucy a lot? Clara nodded. Suddenly unable to speak, Simon sat, twisting the empty watch lace in his bony hands. His long giraffe face was patchy with shadows, and presently he closed his eyes. So Lucy is safe. Right, next chapter, chapter 20, sausage rolls. Thanks. I knew I could ask you. Was a very short letter that Clara got in response. That was all Clara heard from Rupert, scrawled on a postcard. Peter told her that Simon, the bony one, had a postcard too. It arrived at school, said Peter, and Simon had not shown it to anyone, just tucked it in his pocket and walked away. For a long time after that, no one heard anything from Rupert. Clara's birthday passed with, for the first time ever, no acknowledgement from Rupert at all. Don't be angry with him, said Peter unexpectedly. Of course not, said Clara. She wrote to Rupert every week with news of Lucy, gleaned second-hand from Vanessa or Simon, and of the grandparents in Cornwall, who, her grandmother reported, were managing very well with an elderly grey donkey. Without these things, Clara would have been stuck for much cheerfulness to put into her letters. There was no Cornish holiday that year, and it was a relief to Clara when the new school term began in September. The war news was dark, and there seemed nothing they could do to help. Miss Fay knitted feverishly, and when she wasn't knitting, she was busy at a Red Cross centre, packing parcels to go abroad. Mrs. Morgan found a job in a ammunitions factory. Cooking in the canteen, she still appeared. Occasionally, however, she turned up one afternoon when Vanessa happened to be visiting. "Oh, what bliss to see you!" exclaimed Vanessa, hugging Mrs. Morgan, who always filled her with a hilarious sort of joy. "How are you, Mrs. M? Are you very busy?" "I'll give you, Mrs. M, my fine lady," said Mrs. Morgan. "And yes, I'm busy, but in the wrong place. I'm not suited at all at that canteen. I'd rather be filling shells." "Perhaps you will soon." said Clara comfortingly. "I'd better be," said Mrs. Morgan. "And if it's not soon, it'll be never at all. If you ask me, it's only a matter of weeks before the whole place goes bang." "Then you should stay where you are," said Vanessa. "If it goes, it goes," said Mrs. Morgan philosophically. "Canteen's attached, so it'd make no difference. Mr. Morgan's in the thick of it, stacking and crating. Poor Mr. Morgan. He's having a high old time," said Mrs. Morgan, sniffling. "All those young women that's there in one long party for him. And how's your blessed father, Clary? Still full of the joys of spring?" "He's very well, thank you," said Clary cautiously. "I don't see him often. There's an old-fashioned restaurant near his office where he mostly goes out for supper. I can't seem to cook the sort of things that he likes." "None of us can cook the sort of food that we like these days," observed Mrs. Morgan severely. "And what about your own meals?" "We have hot dinners at school," said Clary, "so it doesn't matter so much to me." "Rubbish and nonsense, doesn't matter my hind foot," exclaimed Mrs. Morgan, and dived into her shopping bag. "Sausage rolls," she said triumphantly, producing a paper-wrapped bundle. "They were left over at the canteen, being a bit darker than people like. Now don't go wasting them. I dare say your friend gets fed up at her hospital." I do, agreed Vanessa. "Smoked salmon one day, roast beef the next, ice cream and trifle puddings." Mrs. Morgan gave her a look as if to say, "Just as I expected." "Well then, you put them by, Clary," she ordered, "and later on you can hot one up and have it with a cup of tea. If your young man turns up, you should give him one too. He looks like a do with a bit of meat on him, all bones if you don't mind me saying." "Now what? My young man?" asked Clary, outraged, while Vanessa spluttered with laughter. "Now don't go all coy on me," said Mrs. Morgan briskly. "You're growing up. No use pretending. I was your age when I first met Mr. M, and I never looked back." "Romeo's Juliet was only 14, agreed Vanessa solemnly. "But who is Clary's hungry young man? Do you mean Simon, Mrs. M? Simon the bony one? My brother? Simon? Clary, you could have said—" "I misremembered he was your brother," said Mrs. Morgan crossly. "Yes, him. What other men do we see here? The one she took off to Cornwall, with never a word to her father. Not that I blame her there." "How did you know about that?" demanded Clary, still recovering from the "your young man" and "Clary, you could have said." "Little bird told me," said Mrs. Morgan. "Scraggy old bird, what lives opposite and watches every movement in the street." "And what did your father say when you came back from your jaunt?" "It wasn't a jaunt," said Clary indignantly. "It was something I had to do for Rupert. Simon helped me. So did grandmother, and I don't think father even noticed I'd gone." "He notices your young man, though," said Mrs. Morgan, "and he makes no effort to chase him away. My old dad was the same, glad to get me off his hands. The sooner the better. That was what my dad said, and, if you ask me, yours will be much the same." "Mine too," said Vanessa cheerfully. "I don't doubt it," said Mrs. Morgan, picking up her shopping bag and hitching it on her elbow. "Well, I must be off. Shall we not all be blown sky high? I'll be back on Monday for the laundry. Clary, love." For the sake of Clary, love, and just in case she was blown sky high, Clary forgave her and went with her to the front door. "Thank you so much for the sausage rolls." "You're welcome. I hope the factory stays safe." "What will be, will be. There's your old dicky bird twitching at her window again." Clary waved to Miss Fane, hugged Mrs. Morgan, and went back inside to Vanessa, who said with her unusual seriousness, "Are you really so fond of my bony brother, Clary? If so, may I murmur a few words of gentle warning?" "I don't need any gentle warnings, thank you very much." All right, we'll change the subject. Let's have something to eat before I go. Not the sacred sausage rolls. I brought cheese, hospital cheese, very nutritious. We make it into sandwiches and fry them in the starving watches of the night." "I thought you were all stuffed with salmon and beef and ice cream." "I wish. As it is, we are practically vegetarian. Come on, Clary, food before I keel over." "Then I must go. I only meant to stop for a minute to check you're all right. I haven't seen you since Southampton. Promise you're not falling in love with Simon." "Oh, Vanessa, first Mrs. Morgan and now you. You needn't worry. Do you really think I've fallen in love with Simon? I just like him. I like him so much. He's so kind and he tries so hard. We're friends." "Good," said Vanessa. "I love you liking him. He needs people to like him. He's hardly ever happy, poor Simon." "He was happy rescuing Lucy from under grandfather's nose. Yes, he told me. He does tell me sometimes. I'm sorry, Clary. I was interfering with my gentle warnings. I was being like Matron when she tells me things for my own good, about nice girls not needing lipsticks and not getting fond of patients, and about my voice." "What about it?" "It gets loud," she says, "and loud is vulgar." "Does it get loud?" "Hardly ever." "Ha," said Vanessa. "You too. Never mind. Tell me, how is darling school? Do they miss me? Have they mentioned those in our thoughts today?" "Of course. Let us hold our thoughts day, Vanessa Bonington, loud and vulgar, but very much missed." Vanessa burst out laughing and then said, "You love it, don't you, Clary? School, more than I ever did." "Yes, I do," said Clary, her face suddenly bright. "I really do. It gets better and better and better." And that's where I'm going to leave it for today. Chapter 21 is going to be our next part of our book. Saved by books. How can you be saved by books? You're going to have to find out. Right, my lovely lot. I will read the next part for you very soon. It's been a bit of a miserable week, but looking at the